don't recognize that, well, I recognize some of his introduction. I'm Arnold, and this is my wife, Shirley, and we will be sharing briefly about other things. Is this coming across? I don't like to shout. I know how to shout. Are you all hearing? Yeah! Thank you! Now, what was I going to say? Does this work? Do I need this? You know, when a preacher comes up here, or anybody, this is his workshop, okay? Don't leave it. Oh, never mind. You step up here. Okay. The first thing I want to say is that we are excited to be here, and we have a time frame put on us somewhere. But Shirley and I are really thankful to be sharing in your chapel this morning. A Christmas chapel, there's none quite like it, is there? For many reasons. One is that you're going to go home soon. But there's a new restriction. You have to pass all your courses. Anyway, I'll give a brief overview of my story, a quickie, and then someone wanted us to share what it was like to be a student. You're graduates of what year? Say it. Okay, I graduated 55 years ago. Things were different. I won't go to whether they were better or worse. For me, they were better, because I wasn't. Anyway. I was born in 1936, the second child of 8 children. One was born and died when I was 4. There's now 7 boys and 1 girl. And this is what everybody says. I started school at age 5 because my brother, who was age 6, had to start, and the closest school was over 3 kilometers away. And my brother and I walked there and back every day, without bus, without car, sometimes by horse and sleigh in the wintertime. So that's how I got through grade school barely, with starting extra classes for me in grade 8. Got to high school and was a dropout in grade 11. I was a wild man. I cheated, and my cheating failed. And my cheating was pretty good. But I got saved. I dropped out of high school, and 4 years later came to Christ. In a wonderful baptismal service in Church of the Open Bible in Peterborough, I came to Christ because of the testimony of 2 kids who were sharp, born-again believers. And that cracked my stubborn will by the grace of God. Okay, in the fall of 56, many things between 55 and 56, but I was here as a student, freshman student. I traveled 2,500 miles by train and did not know one individual when I got here. But I started meeting people. I met L.D. Maxwell. Most of you haven't seen. How many of you have seen L.D. Maxwell? In person. I'll get you later. Then I met Paul, his son, and we overlapped a couple of years. I remember his senior message. It was about Mary and Martha in Luke chapter 10. When I told him that, I told him here a few days ago. He said, well, I don't think I remembered, he said. So that was 2 generations, Mr. Maxwell, and then Paul, and then Brother Mark. Wave at us, Mark. We want to see you. I was your dean of students when he came to school. So if anybody needs to talk to me, I don't talk. We had a great year, and we loved the Maxwells very, very deeply. Okay. I don't know if I dare do this. Someone suggested that I go quickly through a day as it was 60 years ago almost when I came here. Now, I'm going to go through that in a real hurry because there's much more important things to say. Rising bells was at 6 every morning. Rise, shine, shave, shower, shampoo, and so on. 6:30 to 7 o'clock was quiet time for devotions, and it was quiet in the dorms. 7 to 7:30 was breakfast. For the student workers who worked in the evening, there was missionary prayer meeting between 7:30 and 8, and then there was classes, 8 to 12 and 1 to 4. And for every Bible class, for every 1 hour that we were in studying Bible, we had to do 2 hours homework for the Bible courses. And we were left on our honor, and if there's, I never, as far as I know, I never broke the honor they placed on me. Okay, 7 to 9 every student had to do an hour and a half student work someplace, do something. I was on the pasteurizing plant for 3 years, pasteurizing and bottling milk. I was a farmer boy and so on. And then my senior year, I was a high school counselor and a high school resident. And 9:30 to 10 was in the dorms. 7 to 9 was in the dorms and study and quiet. 9:30 to 10 was the part of 9 to 9:30 was just do the same thing you did in the morning, go wash up. Lights out at 10 and quiet in the residences. This was an absolutely wonderful time of growing in Christ. Saturday morning, there was study and quiet in the residences again. That wasn't a must to be there. If you wanted to play hockey, which I did, then we could play hockey and other things. But if you're in the dorm, you're in your residence and you were quiet, for those who wanted to see it. I played hockey. I was captain of a B team hockey. Are there any hockey players here? 3. Ooh, bad stuff. I was captain of one of the B hockey teams, and do you know why? As Mr. Maxwell says, Grandpa Maxwell, he said, I travel third class because there ain't no fourth. Well, I played B hockey because there was no C hockey. Okay. And after graduating in 1960, I went back to high school and graduated in 1961. I was out of high school 8 years. I'm back, and I was in high school and graduated with kids that were in grade 1 when I was in grade 9 before. And I was 24 or 5 years old graduating from high school. So when God got a hold of my heart and turned me around, I went for it. I wanted to go to, God had already put his hand upon me. I've written in an old Bible at home that I was heading to the Congo, Africa, God willing. And that happened about 9 years later. So anyway, that's what happened. I graduated, then went 2 years at Columbia Bible College, South Carolina. Has anybody ever heard of CBC in South Carolina? Some of you people. Yes, that's good. It was a great school. It was great. Excuse me, I'm on a search here. It's a great, great college, similar to Prairie and Hart. And Maxwell, founder here, and McQuilkin, founder at Columbia Bible College, were dear bosom buddies, and so on. So anyway, graduated down there. I was even vice president of our graduating class. 1963-64 was deputation, traveled speaking about African Inland Mission and many other things. In the fall of 1964, I was in Switzerland studying French before we could go to the Congo, where we studied Swahili. I'm using the plural we and were. So my wife's coming now. She's going to catch us caught up. She's going to get caught up on some of her history.
Okay, I was born in Shelton, Nebraska in 1936. Only sibling was my brother, my little brother, who was 2 years younger than me. Our parents were not Christians, but they were hard-working people. And my mother worked with my dad all her life, and they worked from 8 in the morning till 9 at night. We didn't get to see them a lot. But I learned something. I learned to be in charge. Not particularly good for a first grader who can become controlling and manipulative. We both came to know the Lord, my brother and I, during high school. I'm grateful for the elderly lady down the street who put Sunday school papers in our mailbox and the village missionaries God sent to our town. God doesn't forget us, and he didn't forget my brother and myself. I'm thankful for the Bible camp in Cannon Beach, Oregon, where my brother came to the Lord. And I received the Lord and experienced his forgiveness and love while Clyde was at camp. I was at home. Actually, I had money to go to camp, but when my brother said he wanted to go to camp, I thought, well, I'm closer, I think, to God than he is, so I'll send him. Well, Bible college. Then there was Bible college. I called my brother and I said, Clyde, I want to go to Bible college. It's time for me. I've been a beautician. I've worked for Braniff Airways. I've gone a year to college at Colorado State College of Education. And so Clyde suggested Kansas City Bible College in Kansas City, Missouri. It is now Calvary Bible College. You that may be from the States have heard of that. And it was a growing experience for me. I was learning so much about myself, my professors, my classmates, my classes, and the Lord. And I just can't say enough about what God did there. You know, you learn through relationships. And it was just amazing what God was doing. And I was seeing some things that really weren't too good. And I remember one experience where two fellas, I didn't date. I was 28, I think, yeah. No, I wasn't quite that age, 26 maybe when I started school. I started Bible school in 1960 to 1963, so whatever that makes me, at that point. But anyway, I remember these two fellas that came up to me and they really gave me a bad time because I didn't date. And so I wrote out the verse, and I can't remember where it is, and I forgot to write it down here. But the verse that says, and I just put the verse, I didn't write it out. But as for God, no, that's not it. Whether it be right in the sight of God to hearken unto you more than unto God, you judge. I tell you, I was a Prairie girl, and even though God didn't send me here, but it was wonderful. And Urbana Missions Conference was where my life was really changed. It was life-changing. I didn't know much about missions, but on December the 27th, 1961, I took out a sheet of paper, 8.5 by 11, and I wrote at the top, God's will for my life, and I signed it at the bottom, Shirley, sober. I am a sober girl. S-O-B-E-R, yeah. Isn't that funny? I thought it was. Especially one time on my way, oh dear, flying, and there was this fellow that was inebriated like crazy. And I thought, oh my goodness, I hope he doesn't sit by me. But he did. He sat right there. And he said, what is your name? And I said, Shirley, sober. So I don't know how I said it. I tried not to say it too obviously, but he was so inebriated he wouldn't have known. Anyway, that was good. But anyway, it was Urbana Missions Conference, and then after that, I took an extra class in Isaiah after Bible school. Oh, I haven't got to Bible school. Where is that? Oh, yeah, Bible school. Anyway, after that, my husband says I have to hurry, and I know I do. I really am trying to hurry. But this extra class was very important because it was a class in Isaiah. And I had been asking God, here am I, Lord, send me. And so I thought I better take that class in Isaiah because I knew there was some good teaching in there about missions. And so one morning, it was time for Isaiah 6. And as we were going through Isaiah 6, I'd been praying and praying, Lord, show me. I am ready. I am willing. I want to go. And my professor, he read it. He said, let's all read 6:8. Here am I, Lord, send me. And the professor stood up and he said, in the original, there's no period there. Go. That was my call. I knew. I was to go. I have never looked up in the original. If there is or isn't a period, it doesn't make any difference. There wasn't one there for me at that point. So anyway, then it was to GMU candidate school, and then to Switzerland. And I'm going to have to really, really hurry here. In 1964, there were many, many missionaries studying French in Neuchâtel. And the missionary ladies, we would all meet for prayer. And one day, one of them said, you know, there's this new guy coming from Canada. Well, I didn't know where Canada was, but anyway, he was coming, and I thought, oh dear, the poor guy, it's awful. With all these girls, it's too bad. But I didn't have to worry. Anyway, I soon discovered that God had more to teach me than French. This in-charge lady was unable to control her emotions. And this new missionary had only been here about a month or so, and I felt I was in love with Arnold. Oh, my stars. And I tell you, if he was in the library, I was gone. I mean, I would leave. I didn't want him to see anything in my eyes that he might be attracted to. So anyway, honey, I am. Anyway, I have to really go fast here because I was invited by the Lindquist, Merle Lindquist, and her husband, to sit with their two children. So that was wonderful. I was in a pension with all girls, which was wonderful, but it was wonderful during your little break to go over into these homes, and this was great. So I went to babysit for them for a day, and anyway, that was great. And then a little bit later, I was asked again to go and to stay there. Well, the kids were wonderful, but when they were asleep, I went into the living room just for some alone time with the Lord. I was a basket case because I'm going to the single. I was going to set the world on fire in Morocco for Jesus. And I was struggling and desperately needed the Lord's help. So I cried, help. And I recall the utter stillness in that room. I was afraid to breathe lest the air would be disturbed. And God's presence was so real to me. And his word came to me, delight thyself in the Lord, and I will give thee the desires of my heart. I thought, that's not really what it says. And I wanted to go and get my Bible, but God's presence was so real that I just stayed there. I wanted to check out that verse, but I didn't. Anyway, could it be that this is your will for me? Is it your desire for me? Is he in your plan for me? And that was very important to me. And anyway, I had it, and so the Lord and I had this wonderful talk at night. I said, but I had it in my heart to go to Morocco. And I knew he was going someplace else. Not only that, but with another mission. I was being destroyed. And, but he reminded me of David had in his heart too, to build a temple. But thou shalt not. And that thou shalt not. I thought, oh dear. And then I thought, well, I had prepared to go, Lord. I had prepared to go. He said, so did David. Yeah, I felt humiliated. I felt so humiliated. What would people think of me? I was overwhelmed. What about GMU, Africa Inland Mission, my home church? I was with GMU. He was with Africa Inland Mission. Oh, and he didn't even know me yet. I felt trapped when another reminder that he would pluck my feet out of the net. And the first part of that verse is, my eyes are ever upon the Lord. And that's where I needed them to be. And then he would pluck my feet out of the net. And you know, he's not finished with me yet. And we have to continue getting to know our God, loving him, and then allowing him to love us. Well, Jesus set me free. And for the next month, I didn't have to run every time I saw him. Although I didn't get very close. In church. In church, I would see him up there, and I'd think, that's the one. But Jesus set me free. And Arnold, you won't believe this, but because for one whole month, I was not anxious, nor was I upset, or whatever I get. I get kind of anxious. Yeah. Anyway, I was shocked. Anyway, let's see. 1 month later, I was invited to that same house to spend the night by these same people with another girl, and her name was Shirley too. Can you believe it? And I got over there, and we were so happy. We were just going. And she said, "Oh yes," she says, "I invited Arnold over for tea." Wow. But then that isn't the worst. I mean, that was good. I might just get to see what color his eyes were. But anyway, I have to just say that Arnold's going to finish this because he's going to tell his side of the story real quickly. Quicker than I do. But anyway, this girl turned to me after we had had tea. He came. We had tea. Wonderful. And then he went in to watch TV because he always listened to all the news so he could listen. He was like a machine. Well, anyway, very disciplined. He was a disciplined soldier for Jesus Christ. He'd been to Prairie. And anyway, it was... But anyway, it was really good. And anyway, honey, you better go on. She turned to me, this other Shirley turned to me and says, "I am exhausted. I'm so tired. I'm going to retire for the night." I said, "You invited him. What are we going to do with him, Arnold?" She said, "Oh, you just go in and talk to him. He's going to tell the rest of the story." I'm sorry.
You stay here. That's your mark. That's her. Your part of the time she took. Okay. So we went to choir practice together, and I rode home in the tram, and I said, "Oh yeah, Shirley. I think the other Shirley." She said to come on in and have a cookie and a cup of tea on the way home. From the center of the ville, Neuchâtel, 10 minutes is where my friends the Lindquists lived. The next 10 minutes is where I lived. So I can always catch a tram and go home. That's what I was planning to do. But after she went to bed, and I was watching the news in the living room there, and I was at one end of the 4-seater couch, and she was at the other end. And so on and so forth. We talked for 45 minutes to an hour about missions, about our backgrounds, and so on and so forth, about family, and on and on. And I'll back up now a couple of years to when I was in the college, South Carolina, my senior year, I said to God and pled with him or something, and I said, "Lord, someday I'd like to be married." And I said, I remember what a roommate said from Prairie. He said, he said he'd like to get married too. Well, that was strange, 2 people, but it was wonderful. He said, "But I won't lift one fleshly finger to find her." He says, "If God doesn't do it, I don't want it." So anyway, I was kind of getting caught in this situation here, and So what I said to the Lord at Columbia Bible College is, Lord, do with me as you did with Adam. And he put Adam to sleep. And when he woke up, guess what? Eve was there. And I said, that's what I want. And I had reminded the Lord, especially to remind myself, to not get entangled if it wasn't of God. So here I'm sitting on the other end of that couch, and we're talking about something, and this is a very prescient moment. As I was chatting and talking with her, just pulls apart here, I shocked myself. All of a sudden, in the middle of a sentence, I'm proposing to her. I am absolutely proposing. Without a... And I finished. I don't know what sentence. Right in the middle. I had no thought of proposing that night. I hadn't even reminisced. I hadn't practiced any line or two. And in the middle of chatting, I'm proposing. And I said, oops. Anyway, and when I finished proposing, what did you say?
I said, yes, and this is the reason why. And I ran and got my notebook that I keep. I carry not a diary actually, but anyway, a ledger, and I write a lot in it. And I read to him 1 month before what God had done for me, and that he had shown me that Arnold was his choice for me. And that's why I could say yes. And that's why I could go to his field and to his work.
Well. So anyway, whatever we were saying there, 5 months later we were married in July in Switzerland, and we're celebrating our 50th sometime next year. So you're all welcome. Okay, we're going to just try to finish up here. I'll come back tomorrow for the devotional. In Swahili, we're in Africa now. We learn French. We now are learning Swahili. And I preached in all 3 languages, English, French, and Swahili. God is a wonderful God. He wants to do past our imagination. He wants to do big things. And there we were, involved. We had 2 babies in the Congo. Our first night in Africa, Shirley's miscarriaging on the ship that we got coming down through the Red Sea and down the Mediterranean and Indian Ocean, and she was the last one off the ship. She was at Mombasa. We landed, and she was the last one off the ship. I had a note in my hand from the doctors, get her into a hospital immediately. That night, she lost our little one. First night in Africa. God was teaching us that Africans, where we were going in the Congo, would lose their babies too. Many, many lessons along the way. Our children were born there. Mike is a chef over here. And our daughter Becky is married to a pastor who has Crohn's. He has Crohn's and she has lupus, and they're very incapacitated. We're going to see them in a couple of weeks. Then we ran a missionary children's school for 4 years, grades 1 through 9. It was just wonderful. We had 20 junior hires in our house and a few other things. I want to briefly take... What time is this over? Now? Good.
Sorry.
Shall I quit? Oh, the president. I was good to him. I will really hurry. This is one of the burdens of my heart, young people. I'll read a letter. At recent IFMA meetings, this is written by a candidate man that knows missions inside and out. At IFMA, it was Interdenominational Foreign Missions Association. We were challenged in many areas. He's writing to me and to others at this point in time. And I was dean of students when I received this letter. He says, in the message given by Elwyn Davies, anybody remember an Elwyn Davies? Yeah? Dear brother, gone to heaven. The current president of IMA, he expressed concern over a number of missionaries. Now listen to this. He's expressing concern over a number of missionaries who are experiencing spiritual ineffectiveness. He said they are well trained in techniques and they have answers for all kinds of complicated situations, but they have no idea of what it means to step out into a waiting world fresh from the presence of Jesus. That's the burden of my heart. For this college, for any place I go. That's why I spend a little time in the time set aside for missionary prayer, quiet for devotion. And I got this letter about 35 years ago. We had long left the field and we're here at Prairie. And that's one of my cries. And I'll shorten this. God says that we are his sanctuary, that he abides, and he wants to abide in us and live his life in us. Just live his life. He wants to live who he is in everything I say and do. So I'm going to let that go. I do have to finish with this story from Africa. This man's name was John. He was in Kenya. I've been in Kenya. I may have stood in the same street corner he was standing on when this incident happened. Anyway, he was there. He was an older man, and someone came along to him. He'd been a founder of the Africa Inland Church, a huge church in Kenya. This was one of the founders. Several years ago, he was standing on a busy street corner in Nairobi. He was leaning on his cane. He was about 85 years old. He was leaning on his cane, and a stranger approached him and stopped and stared at him. And he asked, looking up into this sergeant, a big man, he says, "Are you Jesus? Are you Jesus?" I'll leave it there. God bless.